Welcome back. As I told you guys after part one, we're going to be looking mainly at the conflict that's going to consume Korea as we move into this stage. There's going to be a lot of attention paid by not only the United States, but the rest of the world into this area following the end of World War II. This little country of Korea has now come to the forefront, the front page of the world's news, if you will. And we're seeing this now rise up because the Soviet Union has prevented them from having free elections. In so many aspects, this conflict between democracy and control, the United States versus the Soviet Union, is going to now be at the forefront, at the right in front of people's vision as we come away from World War II. And once the Soviet Union says, we're not going to allow you to have free elections, the United States is ready to go in. The Soviet Union is going to be in the northern part of Korea, and the United States begins to send in support to the south. Now, a lot of this stems from what happened after World War II. Following the end of World War II, the Japanese, as they surrendered, gave the northern part to the Soviet Union. The southern part went to the United States, being the Allied forces. But as you look at it, maybe just as a way of kind of a point of reference, you're going to see this being similar to what happened as the whole of Germany was cut into pieces following their surrender. This is going to be dividing up land that had been Japanese, that they had conquered, now to be both Soviet in the north and United States controlled in the south. Toward the end of June of 1950, you're going to see the Soviets coming south with 60,000 troops. And once they come south, and you're going to see in just a bit how much land they ultimately are going to conquer, but the United States feels compelled to send troops in along with the United Nations, basically defending those who are unable to defend themselves, saying, we now need to step in lest the Soviet Union consume the whole of the peninsula. You can see there on the lower right-hand corner, excuse me, how much land the Soviets had been able to grab, all except that little red line that was going to be the Pusan perimeter is going to be controlled. All of Korea, except for that little pocket, going to be controlled by the Soviet Union. But once the United States gets there, along with the UN troops, you're going to see them push back, and you're going to see them not only going above the truce line, which had been the 38th parallel, that was the dividing line before, but now they're going to keep moving further north, closer and closer to China. Now, the irony here is that really the United States doesn't have a clear beef with the Chinese. Their main focus was the enemy that was going to be to the very northeast tip of Korea. You're going to see the Soviet Union having a very small border with the Koreans. However, the Chinese are the ones that are feeling threatened, especially once the UN and US troops get to that blue line, the solid blue line, in November of 1950. You can see how long it took them to get there from when the US and UN got there in September. Again, you look at October and then November, that's going to be a pretty quick turnaround to be able to recover that much land. Well, the Chinese, feeling threatened, said, hey, we have 1,000,000 guys that are ready and are standing at the ready to come south and attack you. If you do not back off, this is going to be our response. I think in many ways the Chinese said, hey, and perhaps rightly so, the forces are not going to stop at the border between Korea and China. They're going to keep coming. Even though that river is running there, that isn't going to stop them. They're going to march right into China and grab territory that's ours. And so they said, we're ready to defend ourselves. Well, the United States says we're not ready to fight a war against China. We have no interest in poking that bear. We want to now draw south. And so you're going to see them basically going back to the agreed line that just north of Seoul there, which is going to be the 38th parallel. There's fear, there's threat, there's uncertainty about the possibility of dropping one of these new weapons that we've developed, these thermonuclear bombs, to settle what's happening on the Korean Peninsula. But even as the election happens, you'll remember that President Eisenhower had been elected in 52. He had beaten Harry S. Truman, who had only been elected one time. Truman served from 48 when Roosevelt died. Well, Roosevelt died in 45, excuse me, but then Eisenhower got to or was elected in 52. So now you're going to see this being his opportunity to end the war. He has basically said one of his main promises was that he was going to stop the war in Korea. So, as he now comes to power by the 27th of July, you're going to see both sides having come to the table and agreed on peace. They established something called what is today known as the Demilitarized Zone, or the DMZ. This is now supposed to create a ongoing peace between the two Koreas. It still exists today, but there's still a lot of tension between that area. It's been interesting. I've talked to students from Korea, and some of you that are listening to this are some of those students as well. But students that have said, as you get closer and closer to that DMZ, there is palpable tension. Other students have said, well, I didn't really feel it. It's interesting to see what people perceive, but still that gap between the two Koreas is going to exist today. You can see old signs like the one on the left and that space between the two. Now, what's interesting is when they established the line in 53, they put landmines all across that space so that there would be no attacks that would go from one side to the other or vice versa. What's ironic about the fact that there's no human activity in that is that certain species are able to exist within that space. Now, I've this is morbid of me, but it's been kind of humorous to imagine perhaps certain species walking along and all of a sudden stepping on one of the old landmines and going sky high. But either way, when you think about this, more than just these animals living there. And I think that what's a unique concept is that there is no human activity. And to think about spaces of our globe where there isn't going to be mankind and allowing certain things to exist, that's pretty cool. And obviously, it'd be a whole different story without any human interference like the landmines, and to think about what could be possible. But as you also look at that area, it's interesting right now. I don't know how many of you guys have been watching the news, but there's been quite a flap over the last couple days, this uncertainty about the health of Kim Jong-un. It'd be interesting if you haven't done so already, just to read up about that. I certainly don't have any sure word about what's going on there. There's been some questions about whether heart surgery went really bad. Perhaps even by the time you listen to this, there will be more clarity as to what's going on. But as we sit here now, it is still very much of a big question mark of what exactly is happening in North Korea with the life of their leader, Kim Jong-un. Well, I hope that you guys have a good rest of Monday as you listen to this and are able to answer the questions. I hope they go well, and we will be ready for Wednesday. Have a great one, and I'll see you midweek. Bye-bye.